And I said, something about this team gives me 2015 vibes. You didn't call me crazy that day. You were like, I kind of get what you're saying. And then a few weeks into the season, people were like, do you remember when you said that stuff? Don't you feel stupid now? Guess what? I don't feel stupid.
If Kodai Senga can come back and stay healthy, it gives the Mets another starting pitcher. That's a team that already has arguably the best starting pitching depth in Major League Baseball altogether.
So we put that on there, right there. And then with Jose Iglesias song coming out.
Oh!
We add the OMG to
I didn't know.
Oh, wow, surprise.
Welcome to Meet at the Apple. I'm Vito Calisi. That's Jonathan Barron. We're on Twitter at Vito F. Calisi, at JMB9191. This podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and right here on the Mets YouTube. And what we're going to do for you today is we're going to wrap up the first half, and we're going to give you some of the secret weapons that the Mets have in store for the second half out of this All-Star break. John, let's just start this episode off. It's been an amazing first half. This has been one of my most fun first halves I can remember. Working here only 2 years, by far the most fun. And I would say just as a fan, top five. And we love fives. We love David Wright. We love John Olerud.
We do.
Why don't we do some like 5 moments we've loved this year, some stuff like that this episode?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because so much has happened. I mean, you said it yourself, an incredible first half. A first half that's really felt like 3 seasons worth of stuff. I mean, you go back opening day, Seymour Weiner, the rally pimp is born early on. That was April 4th, a doubleheader against the Tigers. The Mets got hot. They won 7 straight there in April. The Mets got not hot. Some bumps along the road, some injuries, some incidences, some gloves, and then a turnaround completely.
Some meetings.
You had Grimace. You had OMG. You had.
There's a dog now.
Roster moves.
Have you seen the dog?
I've seen the dog, the Glizzy Iggy or whatever.
Glizzy Iggy?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been...
OMG.
It's been crazy. It's been crazy.
This team has had 2 slumps and 2 crazy hot streaks. Like, this is in one first half.
Yeah, it's been... But most importantly, it's been so much fun. I think one thing that we need to do is we want to thank you guys for, being with us here through this first half of the season, our first half of the season as the official podcast of the Mets. We're going to get into everything, but I also want to just thank a lot of people that have helped us behind the scenes. Of course, our guy Ty right here.
Ty the guy.
Who has come in and just studded out so hard. Want to thank Bobby, want to thank Dave, want to thank Taylor and Jake.
The big dog, AG.
Yep, want to thank him, want to thank Josh and Social, Janie, Will, Hunter, Ava, everybody else. It's been a lot of fun. I want to thank all the players.
Dylan Goldberg was here for a week, I think, at the beginning.
I want to thank Tommy and Donovan and our friends in PR. It's just been, look, a lot goes into making a show like this happen for everybody. Getting the players in the room with us and all the conversations and the ideas and the trips we take.
We want to thank Steve Gelbs for sharing this room with us.
We want to thank Steve Gelbs for sharing the room with us. And we want to thank the New York Mets for giving us the stories to talk about. And that's really what we're here for, is we're here to tell the stories, help tell the stories, help let the players tell the stories. But, when we're talking to you guys without a player, it's really talking about what we're seeing and the fun surrounding the team and all that's going on here at Citi Field. So, I want to really start here in this first half recap by saying, incredibly, after Saturday's win, the Mets Fangraphs playoff odds for the first time peaked above 50%. I was doing some math. And I want to lay out...
And this guy loves math.
And I want to lay out...
Were you good at math in school?
Not really. I'm good at baseball math.
But not math.
Not math.
That's crazy.
I want to lay out what we're looking at here for the second half as sort of a 30,000-foot view. And then we'll start talking about some moments, and then we'll get into what we really want the Mets to do, when it comes to how they can get themselves in the playoffs in the second half. So here's the math. The Mets go into the break with a record of 49-46. Right now, the third wildcard spot in the National League, if you go on win percentage, pacing about 84 wins. The Braves, as of right now, they're on pace for about 89 wins. And keep in mind, Vito, the Mets have a lot of head-to-head games with Atlanta, a big 4-game series right out of the All-Star break here at Citi Field. Be here for that one. You're not going to want to miss that. So those games, each game is a swing. But if the Mets want to get to 88 wins based on where they are right now, they need to go 39-28 in the second half. They have 67 games in the second half. That's the math the Mets need to get to. It is not a number that this team cannot get to. It's very attainable. So that right now, as you enter the second half and you're thinking, okay, what do we need to do to get us to a spot where we are comfortably in the playoffs and possibly the first or the second wild card of the National League? That's the record the Mets need to get to.
Yeah, we're looking to a strong finish to the second half. after this first half, look, you've seen this team put up in about 50 games, put up 5 runs or more. We talked about that number the other day. That's an insane offense, and we're working on we're seeing additions to the bullpen with things like Jose Butto, Daniel Nunez, who's been an absolute stud. You're going to see Kodai Senga come back, and you never know who could come up from AAA and help in that bullpen. I mean, we've talked about it before. You could see a guy like Dom Hamill come up.
Yeah.
I've heard people online talking about Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat was asked about it himself, and he said he'll take any chance he can to get to the major leagues. So the bullpen situation right now, there's things in play. There's options, and as we saw on Saturday's game, bullpen isn't in as shambles as the common fan might think it is. When you have lockdown people like Daniel Nunez,
right.
Jose Butto,
right.
and Edwin Diaz, who had a great finish to the game the other night.
Right. So I mean, that kind of segues us into us talking about some of the secret weapons that the Mets might be able to deploy in the second half. So why don't we just get into that right now, and then we'll talk about some of our favorite moments and some other big series, some key series that the Mets are going to have ahead of them in the second half. You mentioned Kodai Senga, and I think it really all starts with the return of Kodai Senga, who is making an outing, his third rehab outing for AAA Syracuse on Sunday, going into the break. Might need 1 or 2 more before he's ready to return to action. We'll see what the Mets' plan is for Kodai Senga. But if Kodai Senga can come back and stay healthy, it gives the Mets another starting pitcher. That's a team that already has arguably the best starting pitching depth in Major League Baseball altogether. And now you take Senga, who doesn't really need to be the relied upon ace when you have guys like Luis Severino, who's been as good as he has, and Sean Manaea, who's been great, and Jose Quintana, who's been great. Just to name a few of the starters in this rotation, 1, 2, 3. So you take Senga, that gives you the flexibility and the option to say maybe Christian Scott, who is a guy who the Mets want to keep his innings limit down. You know, you don't want to have him surpass for the 2024 season 180 necessarily. Maybe Christian Scott is a guy who can help you out of the bullpen.
And Christian Scott's a guy who's very comfortable in the bullpen.
And he was a reliever at Florida. Good point, Vito. And we've seen David Stearns in the past use his really young, talented pitchers who are on innings limits out of the bullpen to help the major league team. You mentioned Brandon Sproat. Look, Brandon Sproat right now is in Double-A. So we're not going to sit here and tell you
teammate of Christian Scott.
Teammate of Christian Scott.
Which we found out we thought so, but we asked Christian Scott about this after the interview we did with him, and he said they had 1 year of overlap, right?
Yep, they did. And Brandon Sproat's also a guy who has pitched out of the bullpen in the past a little bit at University of Florida. So, you know, with Sproat, it's a little bit tougher to say. He's in Double-A right now, threw a scoreless inning at the Futures game, sub-2 ERA between High A and Double-A this season, his first full year of pro ball. So I don't want to say that Brandon Sproat's going to be a relief ace, but
no,
it's an option. A couple other options. You mentioned Dom Hamill, who's been really good.
Spin rate god.
How about Mike Vassell, who has now put together 4 straight quality starts for the Syracuse Mets in the span, 21 strikeouts to just 2 walks. Another guy who could possibly help the
new
Mets.
Big unit.
Who could possibly help the Mets out of the bullpen. Wilkin Ramos, who was having a dominant season for Double-A Binghamton, is with Syracuse right now. A really herky-jerky, tough delivery to pick up. Hard sinker. He's been really successful. His last 5 outings for the Syracuse Mets, he has not allowed a run, so he could possibly be an option. And then you have a couple more guys who are coming back from injury. One of them is Sean Reed Foley, who he was in the circle of trust. You know, he was being used in high leverage spots before he went down.
Multiple innings too.
Multiple innings. You heard Carlos Mendoza earlier this week say that Sean Reed Foley is on his way back. He's trending positively. Then there's Bryce Montes de Oca, who's a really interesting one. Hasn't pitched in the big since 2022, missed all of last season, but you guys know the deal with BMDO. I mean, he's throwing 100.
Yeah.
And he's working his way back. I wouldn't put too much into what's going on with the numbers at AAA Syracuse. He's a guy that could help this bullpen as well. And then you have Shintaro Fujinami, who last year the Orioles went out and acquired late in the season to join their bullpen from Oakland. Another guy that throws 100 miles an hour. So right there, 3 guys who could help you that are just coming back from injury. So you don't have to go out and
You
use
also forgot about Reed Garrett.
And you have Reed Garrett, who also will be back at some point. So yesterday, on Saturday, the Royals and Nationals made a trade. Hunter Harvey was acquired by the Royals, and a lot of people looked at the return. It was a high pick recently, and a lot of people looked and raised their eyebrows at that return and said, well, if that's setting the market, you know, what are we going to have to pay for some possibly top flight relievers? And no one wants to give up good prospects.
No.
You know, I mean, Ernest Dove says it all the time. Prospect hugger. We're prospect huggers too.
I love my prospects.
And the Mets are chock full. The system is chock full of prospects. But the Mets might not necessarily have to go out and use that prospect capital. There are options internally, and it starts with Senga, a guy like Tyler McGill. Tyler McGill might be able to help the Mets out of the bullpen at some point. And we saw him do it a couple years ago. So the Mets have a lot of internal options, and they've been creative, and I think that they'll continue to be creative with how they could bolster the bullpen, just like they did with Jose Butto.
You know what's crazy about the beginning of this season, dude, is I started the season preview episode,
Yep.
and I said, something about this team gives me 2015 vibes.
Yep.
You didn't call me crazy that day. You were like, I kind of get what you're saying. And then a few weeks into the season, people were like, do you remember when you said that stuff? Don't you feel stupid now? Guess what? I don't feel stupid. And this is a situation where, you know what this team doesn't even need? This team doesn't need a Yoenis Cespedes acquisition.
Oh, no. And there's one other secret weapon, quote unquote.
Can I say it?
Go ahead.
Is it Starling Marte?
It is Starling Marte. And people, Starling Marte, before he hit the injured list, his last 93 plate appearances, slashing 326, 376, 512. Now, with the knee, you don't know what's going to happen and how quickly he's going to be back. But here's the thing about Starling Marte. Since he's gone down, the Mets offense has really not missed a beat.
Yeah.
So if you want to say they should go out and acquire an outfielder to help fill the void for the meantime, sure. I'm not saying you can't, but you just got to have Starling Marte back by the postseason, healthy and ready to go. Maybe not postseason, maybe a little bit later in the season, mid-August. But like, you don't have to rush him back. And when he comes back, he is a big piece of a lineup that's already great.
Look at 2022 when Starling Marte went down for the during the second
with a
half.
broken hand.
This team lost a major part, and you could say a lot of those losses late in the season that this team should have won. A lot of it was because Starling Marte wasn't in the lineup.
As Starling Marte went, the Mets went.
Starling Marte is one of the most important players in this lineup, and like John said, they're still winning without him, and they're still scoring 5+ runs. People are getting free fries almost every night without Starling Marte in the lineup.
They are. So, those are just some of the weapons that the Mets have that they can deploy. And also, it is a deep system. So if the Mets do want to go out and acquire a player that they find valuable and use some trade chips to do so, like, they have that ability as well.
This isn't like a few years ago where the only prospects you had to talk about are Brett Beatty, Francisco Alvarez, and Mark Vientos, and you like don't know what to do because you can't give up any of those people. This system is stacked all the way down to the Dominican League.
It is. It is. Starting pitching has been great. I think that was, when we look back, you mentioned the preview episode we did back in March it was.
Yeah.
You talk about the starting rotation. There are a lot of people that didn't see a quote-unquote ace in the rotation. There was no Scherzer, Verlander, DeGrom, whatever.
And you know what, John? I don't want you to have to pat yourself on the back. I'm going to say it. You said quantity over quality.
Yeah, there was no underbelly of the rotation.
You were saying there's not. John was saying you don't need one ace when you have 5 2 to 4 guys.
That's all you need. Guys that can go out and give you a chance. I'll say it again. Said it last episode. You need guys that aren't going to ruin the game. You can't have a game ruiner in the rotation. And a couple years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago in the past.
Yeah, when this team was picking up guys from the Long Island Ducks.
That might have been the case. Right now, this rotation does not have one of those guys. The emergence of David Peterson. He has been so good for this team.
And he had a kid.
And
when Mets players have kids, they come back on fire.
They do. Francisco Lindor last year. Me last year. I'm not a Met player. But yeah, it's a solid, deep rotation.
And didn't Edwin Diaz too?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
2022, right?
Yep. So there's a lot to look forward to that is maybe beneath the surface a little bit right now that can help the Mets be even better come the second half. So now, Vito, speaking of the second half, I think before we get to our top moments of the first half, I want to talk about some of the series on the calendar that Mets fans should be circling right now and looking ahead to for the second half, because there is a lot of big baseball. And what more can we ask for?
Is one of those the Braves series pretty much right out of the break?
That is one of them.
That's the first home series here after the All-Star break. And
well, I want to start with the Marlins because that's the first series out of the break.
Okay, you're talking about not just at Citi Field.
I'm talking about overall.
Got it, my bad.
So the Marlins series. The Mets have done a great job of this, especially this week. Not overlooking their opponent, not falling victim to the trap series at all. People say, beat a good team. I've seen my boy Sean Marash on Twitter saying that to Mets fans. Look, Sean, I get it. You're driving the engagement. I got you. I know what you're doing, but you're not going to get me with that. If you don't beat the bad teams, you are the bad team.
Yeah, 2020.
That's how it works in baseball.
2022, when the Mets lost to the Cubs in games that they should have beat the Cubs at the end of the season. And then, look, not to go back in time, 2022. I remember I just started this job. I remember sitting in the booth, the games, the Mets were struggling to beat the Marlins and being like, I don't know how this team is going to go on a playoff run if you can't even beat the Marlins at the end of the season.
That's it.
And then like that year, we played the Nationals like right after the trade deadline. And it was like, oh, the Nationals don't have anybody in this team. You can come out and you can spank them. Guess what? It didn't happen.
Jacob deGrom came back. The Mets lost that game.
Yeah. You got to beat the bad teams.
You got to beat the bad teams. And don't feel bad about beating the bad teams, because the team that does not clean up against those bad teams is the team that's going to be on the outside looking in when the big dance starts.
And not to talk about our friends on the other side of town, but sometimes the good teams are playing like the bad teams.
That's the case.
You have the Yankees right now who haven't won a series in what?
Well, they just won one.
Okay, sorry.
They beat Baltimore.
Ooh.
There, yeah.
Sorry, they beat the better team.
They did.
But see, there it is.
Yeah.
They beat a better team.
They did.
And they lost to all the bad teams.
They did. But don't feel bad, because the Mets have taken care of business against the Nationals and the Rockies.
Did you see that fight?
Yes, I did.
Did you see my tweet?
I did not.
Aaron Judge looked like a middle school, like it looked like a teacher at a middle school fight.
Well,
like,
he needs to be.
He's just towering over every other person. Like, it looked insane.
But he's got to help keep the peace, because if he doesn't, then all hell's going to break loose.
He kept the peace, but it just looked insane. Like he is a gigantic man.
He is a gigantic man. But yeah, the Mets need to beat the bad teams. There's a finite amount of games in a baseball season.
And one of those bad teams coming out of the break is the Yankees. You got to beat the Yankees.
You got to beat the Yankees, although they're a little bit back on track. But those games,
John, I'm being a troll.
Okay. Those games, they'll be fun.
You didn't pick that up in the last few minutes of me just attacking them for no reason?
You love to attack them. I'm a pass. I think I hate the Yankees more than you.
Yeah, I mean, you live in a house. You live in Yankee Stadium East.
I do. I live in Yankee Stadium Great Neck, but I try to keep it cool when it comes to the Yankees.
But dude, that's a big series coming out, because if you take one of those two, you've won the series for the season.
Sure.
And it's just you just want to keep that going.
Well, you want to pace yourself, because there's a lot of teams behind you. Look, this race isn't over.
That's leading right into the Braves series.
It is.
So you want to go into that Braves series strong. You want to have a great series against the Marlins, but you don't want to have a stopper in the Yankees. You want to continue to perform against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Take that short bus ride back over to Citi Field for a really important series against the Braves and keep this momentum going. Because you know what's funny? John and I talked about this the other day. There's a piece of going into the break where you're winning all these games. And
I wish we could just keep playing.
Like, it sucks to have a break in the middle of this when they're playing so good right now.
It does.
So you have to come out against the Marlins, and you have to be playing at your highest potential.
You got to take care of business against Miami, just like the Mets did against the Nats and the Rockies. But the other thing here is that, and I think we've said this a couple episodes ago, if you stumble at any point, there's a lot of teams that consider themselves in it. Like the Reds are in this thing. They've been hitting like crazy. The Giants are in this thing. The Cardinals are in this thing. The Pirates.
So question. So this week, right now, like Padres and Braves are playing each other.
Yeah.
Who are you? What score? What are you hoping to see at the end of those games? Because it's tough, right?
You can't lose there, really. Like the Braves took game 1, the Padres took game 2. So the Mets get within 3 in the loss column of Atlanta on Saturday night. And the Mets gain a game, and they're 3.
But my question is, do you want to push the Padres down more, or do you want to get closer to the Braves?
It depends if you're looking to go all in or not. I mean, look, for the Mets, you really can't lose, because one of those teams is going to suffer. And we said that eventually these teams, everyone's going to start playing each other, and there's going to become some separation. But there are still a lot of teams in the race that think that they have a chance of making the playoffs, as they should.
You know, there's a situation where the Mets could play the Brewers to end the season and then immediately play them in a first playoff round.
Yeah, it's like when the Jets played the Raiders week 16 back in the day, and then went out there and broke my little 10-year-old heart.
And can I say something?
Yeah.
If that's the case, you know what that gives me vibes of?
What?
That's like youth sports movie storyline. Because
also David Stearns against his old team.
David Stearns against his old team. You start the season getting swept by them. There's a fight.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about the Hoskins
And if you remember how every youth sports movie, you lose embarrassingly to a team in the beginning of the movie,
and then you come back and you triumph,
and then you have your whole season of events,
storyline.
You have your montage of wins, and then your big moment is against that team you lost to in the beginning.
That'd be fun.
Cinema.
That'd be fun. You mentioned the Cardinals. There is a huge game that is going to take place on August 5th in St. Louis. It is a makeup game. Now, I will say, for the Mets, there is some BS travel that they're going to have to deal with, because they needed to find a mutual off day that the Mets and Cardinals both had to make this game up. And for the Mets, it is between a trip to Los Angeles, Southern California, Orange County, Angels, and Colorado. They're going to be at Angel Stadium, and they're going to fly to Busch, play one game, and then they're going to go to Colorado. But this game is so important, not only because obviously the Cardinals are in the standings in the race, but because if the Mets can win the game, they will solidify the season series victory against the Cardinals and the tiebreaker. So that game is on August 5th. That's going to be a massive game, and I think both teams both managers might manage with a little bit more urgency to get that one because the tiebreaker is up for grabs.
That's going to be a lot like that Cubs Sunday Night Baseball game. You're going to see these guys going out there and treating it like a playoff game because, like John said, when all of these teams are getting into the same, combining and just getting into this cluster, these tiebreakers are so important.
Yep, and you're aware of it because you're not playing a tiebreaker game anymore. It's all about the head-to-head.
We still have to go to San Diego too.
That was next on the list. There is a trip in late August, so the Mets have only 9 home games in August. That's it, just 9. 3 against Oakland, 3 against the Marlins, 3 against Baltimore. The rest of August, they are not home whatsoever. After that, they go on a huge trip. 4 in San Diego, massive, and 3 in Arizona, another team that's right in the thick of this race. Those are going to be giant games for the Mets before they come home on Labor Day and play a Red Sox team that is in a race in the American League. So, and of course, the Brave series, like you mentioned, first home series out of the All-Star break. July 25 to 5, 6, 7, July 28th, going to be massive. Going to be just absolutely giant. So,
and then there's a stretch at the end of the season where you're playing Philly. You're playing Philly, Florida back to back with each other.
The Nats are in there, I think.
Yeah,
at some
and like
point.
you're basically going. I think we go there and then come back and play them here.
Yeah. So I mean, look,
this is going to be an exciting second half.
It's going to be something else, baby.
All of you fans that said all I want is meaningful September and August baseball. I hope you meant what you said because this is about to be.
You're going to eat it up.
This is going to be. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be on your couch every night. You're going to be watching Mets games. But guess what? Isn't that so much better than getting ready for a Jets season that's going to make you miserable?
Because that's going to happen too.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
That's definitely going to happen.
You know what I haven't said this season on the show? Confetti on my shoulders about the Jets.
You're a clown.
I said I haven't said it.
I know, but you just did. So you alluded to it.
I'm not going to say
You're
that
a
about
clown for saying it last
I'm
year.
not going to say it about the Jets this year.
All right. Now, I think we should get into, after we've really laid out what is to come, and there is a lot to come in the second half. It's going to be crazy. And Ty, we'll stay in touch. Ty's going to be back in college, so you'll be watching Ty,
if you
right?
See Ty,
Flying back to the World Series.
if you see Ty at Vandy, don't buy him a drink because he's only 19. I do want to bring up something later on in the episode. We got to sit down with Evan the Artist.
Heck yeah.
Evan the Artist is a very talented 14-year-old artist who we met. We met through Dom Hamill because he painted some shoes for Dom Hamill. Evan is at the All-Star game right now, live painting shoes for all 4 days. And he's painting some stuff based on Corey Seager. He's got some stuff that he's making inspired by Pete Alonso, all of his favorite players. And he made me a pair of shoes that he'll show on this episode. But Evan the Artist, really talented kid who's also painting bases for the Citi Field concert series coming up, where I believe each artist will get a base that he's painting based on that. So that's going to come up at the end of the episode. But let's jump into our favorite moments of the season.
I think we should go 1 for 1. So like you do number 5, I'll do number 5. You do number 4, I'll do number 4.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So you kick it off with your number 5.
How about this? How about we just...
This is the 5s, by the way.
This is the 5s. How about we start off with each of our thing that we... Just to get it out the way.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to start off... Look, the Grimace stuff this year has been some of my favorite stuff in my Mets fandom.
In your life.
In my life. It's been so much fun. All the memes have been great. Seeing it everywhere. And like growing up a Mets fan, having a positive... Being a part of a positive impact on the team is something really special that I'll never forget. Even being a part of it in any way, getting to catch the first pitch, having help it come together, but having something that's been this much fun for the Mets fans and for everybody watching, it's been really special for me. And it's been really cool. And catching a first pitch was just nuts. And that's it. I just wanted to say the Grimace stuff for me, number 5. It's been fun, guys. Keep up.
That's not number 1 for you.
Yeah, but like I just want to get it out the way.
Okay.
So that stuff, it's been incredible. Keep showing up dressed like Grimace. Keep showing up with their signs, and then we'll see what other mascots show up throughout this year. We got a dog. Maybe we'll have a cat soon.
So I guess my number 1, although this is quite anticlimactic, was that night, June 28th against the Astros. I mean, Jose just announced that he'll be performing OMG at the All-Star game. We've had the privilege of talking to Jose twice. If you have not checked those conversations out, please do. Jose is incredible, and what he's doing is incredible. After our most recent conversation with Jose, he goes out and puts up his first ever multi-homer game. It's just magic what's happening. And look, Jose is the one who earned the roster spot here. He's the one who wrote the song. He's the showman. You know, we in the production world can only work with the opportunities and the different things and tools we have. This is one that happened to work out, but
a lot of special stuff coming together. I mean, like having him being here to have the song, you guys being on the forefront of like, oh, like let's like make the best of this opportunity. Give big shout out to J Mac Customs.
Yeah.
J Mac Customs making the sign that like, dude, I've said for such a long time this team needed a cool home run trophy.
Yeah.
And like watching the guys pose with this sign,
it's awesome.
After every home run is incredible.
Yep.
And this isn't, you know why this isn't anticlimactic? Because people probably knew we were going to say these things.
I guess. Yeah,
so now
right.
you're guessing. You're like, oh, I wonder what the next few things they're going to say is.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, him hitting the 2 homers on Friday, and then we had the music video going, and he crossed home plate right as the chorus dropped, which was, I don't think he did it on purpose, but what more can you say about everything that's gone on with it? You know, he's so deserving. He's such a nice, humble dude. And that night, I mean, when we went from song straight into fireworks, everyone makes fun of me. I was on headset out in center field. We were counting down to the start of the fireworks show, and there was a moment that I've gotten just destroyed for in a fun playing way. I was like, 3, 2, 1, holy, because like I couldn't. It all worked out so incredibly well. So yes, that is my number one. June 28th, the Mets winning that game against Houston on the Friday night, and us doing the concert that. OMG, by the way, the Mets have played great baseball since, so you can all stop with that nonsense.
I think, don't even wake it back up. All right,
let's
jump into moments. All right, number 5 moment for me, Game 2 of the Subway Series.
Okay.
Game 2 of the Subway Series was so many different things. One, it always feels good to beat the Yankees.
Yep.
We just got to be honest about that. The offensive show that this team put on that night, but also just like the rain delay and the vibes that were in this stadium that night, from the people showering to the Grimace Thunder and Lightning moment. That night was the night where I was like, oh no, this isn't like a run. This isn't like a short. This isn't a short run.
It wasn't a blip.
This wasn't a blip on the radar. This is a long-term thing. This team is special. These guys are special. These fans are special. And it was just incredible watching the Mets just put on a show that night.
Yeah, even after the rain delay, they came out swinging hot bats. Tyrone Taylor, big homer.
Yeah.
All right, my number 5, a game that Vito was at, was the night that Francisco Lindor hit the big home run at Dodger Stadium on Friday night. I believe it was April 19th, excuse me. And that moment for Francisco, first of all, in the 7th inning to give the Mets the lead, so a clutch homer. But also, he hit it from the left side. And Francisco, as everyone knows, got off to a bit of a slow start from the left side. And people were being critical and saying, oh, should he only hit righty? And he hit that home run. And it was such a sigh of relief, I'm sure, for Francisco. It really opened up the floodgates to the great season that he's had. But also, the Mets winning that game that night, and then they went on Saturday, take 2 or 3 from the Dodgers. It was kind of like, okay, wow, yeah, like, we can play with the LA Dodgers, who have Betts and Freeman and Ohtani and Teoscar and Will Smith and you name it. So that was a massive series, and that was the first real surge the Mets went on. And that was a huge hit for Francisco to really set the tone, I think, for him having the incredible season that he's had. So that's my number 5. What's your number 4?
All right, my number 4 is the Mark Vientos walk-off home run. That was in, if you remember, that was in Vientos' first appearance, before he got sent back down and called back up. And that was when Mark Vientos got called up for a few days because of, was it paternity leave?
Yep. Oh, yeah, Starling Marte.
Starling Marte paternity leave. He was only up for a few days, and in those few days, he came up, and we sat with him in this room. He went over it after us, told us about that moment from his perspective, and he said, I know in that moment I was going to do one of two things. I was either going to strike out or I was going to win the game. And that moment, walk-off home run, John and I had already planned to release his interview that day.
Yep.
So we were just pumped. I ran into the booth. John and I high-fived. But seeing Mark Vientos be able to have that moment as somebody who, like, we've become big fans of, like, Mark's been good enough to do the show multiple times, always been a great guest. But seeing get a young guy who grew up a fan of the Mets, his dad, a diehard Mets fan who instilled that love of the Mets into him, seeing him have that moment with everything he had to battle against, how could you not be romantic about Mark Vientos?
And I think that moment, hitting the home run against a really good pitcher in Matthew Liberatore, in a way kind of set up what we've seen subsequently from Mark Vientos and really set up the season that he's had, already surpassed his home run total from last year. He's been one of the best third basemen in baseball since he came back up on May 15th. So that was a huge jumping off moment for Mark. And I think the organization also realized, like, yeah, this dude could play. And, you know that I've always thought that.
Yeah.
Going back to his days in the minor leagues, the opposite field power that he possesses does not grow on trees. He's also showed some pull side power as well. His home run spray chart, by the way, thing of beauty.
They showed
right,
it on SNY.
left,
Yeah.
center, beautiful. Couldn't even script it if you wanted to. So, but that moment for Mark, I think for him, gave him a world of confidence, even going back to the minors and coming back. But for the organization, also instilling that belief in him, huge. And I think it's gotten us where we are today. All right.
What's your number 4?
My number 4 is the Mets' first win of the season.
Okay.
April 4th, the doubleheader against the Tigers. They coughed away a lead in game 1. They were being no-hit throughout most of game 2. We were still waiting for Carlos Mendoza to get that first win. You go into the 9th inning. Manhasset native Jason Foley of the Tigers, their closer at the time, not able to pitch in game 2 because he pitched in game 1. The Mets took advantage. Pete Alonso ties with a home run. A couple batters later, Brett Beatty's rounding third on Tyrone Taylor's walk-off hit. Carlos Mendoza has his first win. And the Mets, instead of starting 0-6, change it to 1-5, and they go on a road trip to Cincy and Atlanta. They take 2 of 3 from both of them, and it stabilized them, I'd say. You know, the flight was a lot happier, but for Mendy to get his first win in the fashion that they did, for them to really set the tone of that never say die Met team that we've seen all year long. We talked about it with a lot of guys. They've all told us about the philosophy, crack the dam, make the other team waste the bullpen pitcher for the next day possibly. Just continue to be tough on other teams. That was the first example of it. And for me, that was a big one to start the season, I think.
All right. My number 3 moment is the comeback win against the Rangers. That was during the 7-0 streak.
Yeah.
And
the Alvarez hit.
Hit just that night because this team, like,
Vito was going through it when they were losing.
I was going through it when they were losing. But we've seen, because there was a lot, because remember, the McDonald's had changed the profile picture that night.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, this is, like, it was the same way you felt about other moments as well, where you're just like, oh my God, this is going to be a giant nightmare if they lose this game. But like the Grimace stretch and even everything from the team meeting on, the selfie on, I like stopped feeling like when they went down 2-3 runs, I stopped feeling like the game was over.
Yeah.
Even that night, I wasn't like, oh, this game is toast, this is over. I was like, no, like I feel like they're going to come back. And then the ability to come back in that game, and this was before the Rangers like really started struggling. The Rangers and the Mets were pretty even at this point. That game was a big statement in my mind because it was like, no, this is it. Like the never say die Mets. This is here to stay. This isn't going anywhere.
That was a big road trip after the Mets took 2 or 3 from San Diego.
Yeah.
From the Marlins, swept the Padres, then went on the road, kept it going.
Chicago,
1-4 of 6.
yeah.
It was Texas, Chicago. So that's a good one as well. Similar to the Atlanta game back in April, where they were trailing. Brandon Nimmo had a huge night. DJ Stewart did a big home run when they took 2 of 3. All right,
what's your number 3?
My number 3 was the victory last Sunday in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
That was massive. Edwin Diaz coming back, Brandon Nimmo breaking a scoreless tie, putting the Mets up 1-0 in the 8th inning. The Pirates, a better team than people want to give them credit for, by the way, who have played well since the Mets left town. Just want to throw that out there. The Pirates coming back with 2, bottom 8. You're thinking, oh man, that's tough. And then the Mets facing Chapman. We talked about it with Jose Iglesias. Alvarez's walk, Iglesias' walk. Bader had a good at bat to give the Mets first and second, no outs. He singled. Iglesias, the battle, and then him to bat flip the walk, which was huge. Turn the lineup over. Francisco Lindor takes advantage, being the clutch, great leader he is, getting the go-ahead hit, and then Edwin Diaz shutting the door. That was a really fun win. I know a little bit of recency bias there, but that was big. And again, it was the Mets didn't let any stumblings that they had fallen upon impact the way they were playing. They had lost the last 2 in D.C. The Friday night game in Pittsburgh, they allow 7 home runs. They win on Saturday. If you lose on Sunday, then maybe the bad feeling starts to creep back a little bit. They didn't let it happen. They stuck with it. They earned another big win, and the way that they did it, that was a lot of fun for me. So that's my number 3. What about your number 2?
All right, my number 2 moment this week, it was finally getting into that wild card spot.
Ah, okay.
Just because to think where we were, 11 games under 500.
Yep.
To before the first half is even over,
22-33,
to make that run and to get to that point before the All-Star break even hits, that's so important. And because like one thing I always look back on in 2015, and like this is what I've done every year since 2015, is whenever the Mets are struggling in the first half, I look at the Mets record and I look at where the Mets were leading into the All-Star break in 2015 versus where they are at this point. And being able to go into this All-Star break at an even better position than that team was. I mean, I know, look, going for the division versus a wild card is a whole different thing. There weren't 3 wild card positions back then, but like feeling more confident this year than I even felt that year, it's just a mental thing and it feels so good. And just seeing it, like I said, doing it before the All-Star break is insane when you had an 11-game deficit
No, I mean, you hit it all on the head there.
Okay.
I'll let you my number 2.
Okay.
The game-ending 2-2-3 double play on Sunday in London.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
many
another
reasons.
comeback, by the way.
For many reasons. One, because it was an early game. We got to finish our work by like 2 that day. That was sick.
That was cool.
Yeah.
But, just being able to split that series with the Phillies, who we know are obviously off to such a great start, have had such a great first half. But, that was a really fun game. Back and forth, and it was just classic high-stress baseball early in the morning.
Yeah.
And for the game to end in such a rare way, the first time a game has ever ended like that. And Luis Torrens, who that move, bringing Luis Torrens in, has made such a massive impact. He's thrown out 8 of 11 would-be base stealers to this point. He's been great offensively as well. The Mets catching duo, Francisco Alvarez coming back from injury, by the way, right around that time, also massive, also around the time the Mets really took off. That was just a lot of fun that morning. So a heroic moment for Luis Torrens, for the Mets to hang on, for them to split that series. They came back. That was when it all started. They took 2 of 3 from Miami, and then they just went on the tear. They've really been on since then.
Yeah, the London game was incredible, and also because it was such a special series that we'd been looking forward to.
You didn't want to lose both.
Yeah, we'd been looking forward to this series for like over a year at this point, waiting for it to come. So to get one of those and in such dramatic fashion is incredible. Okay, number 1 moment for me. A game that I think means a lot when you think about the storyline of a season and the mentality of a team. It's that Sunday night baseball game in Chicago. Because what that game showed me is that this team can win must-win games. You might be saying, how can you call that a must-win game? As we said early, as we went on a diatribe about this earlier in this episode, these tiebreaker games are important. Those are playoff games in themselves in a way, because that might be the game that gets you into the playoffs at the end of the year when all these things lie. And that's a game where the Mets had every chance to lose. You had Edwin Diaz come in and get suspended right off the bat. You had Drew Smith get injured in that same game because maybe there's not the best practice for this kind of ejection. But that's besides the point. But for the Mets to win that game when everything was stacked against them basically at that point, to come out and win, get that. And we've heard rumblings that the players themselves have said it did feel like a playoff game and they went in there with that attitude. Makes you feel really good about the future of this team and where they may lie. Because a team with that attitude, maybe 2022, you win one of those games in Atlanta when every game is a must-win game.
That's a good one. I have so many written down. Look, my number 1 is June 28th. Jeff McNeil's home run to really break that game open was incredible. Some others that I wrote down here. The JD walk-off home run against Miami. That was great. The Lindor flu game. He comes off the bench.
Lindor flu game was
walk-off
big.
hit against the Cubs. The Subway Series. You mentioned Game 2. Game 1.
Jose's game was a flu game this week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he had an IV. The Subway Series, Game 1, 2-homer inning against Garrett Cole with Bader and Vientos hitting home runs of the inning. This past Friday, the 3 homers in the inning after the Mets give up a home run, Sean Manaea gives up a 2-run shot, and you have 3 homers, 3 solo shots, including Jose's first home Mets home run. That was electric. That was incredible.
What about it feels like all the times Harrison Bader broke up no-hitters?
All of those times. Nimmo's walk-off home run on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Down 3-2 against the lefty, a tough lefty. That was a big one.
You know what one of my favorite Brandon Nimmo moments ever is?
What?
2022. Mets are down against the Cardinals. And
he hit the home run. Oh, coming out of break, right?
Coming out of break, and like it was this dramatic comeback, but like the most anticlimactic moment because SNY comes back as the ball is left, and you're like, oh wait, did they just come back?
Yeah. And then another one. The first time we saw the hit celebration.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds silly, but coming out of the team meeting, the guys they rallied around something, and we've seen it a whole heck of a lot since May 30th. JD hit a big go-ahead home run that night to straightaway center field. He's obviously been a huge part of all the fun that we've seen. Boy, oh boy. I mean, we were like, all right, we're going to do it this way. There's a lot of moments.
There's a lot to cover.
We might have missed a couple, but man, dude, it's been incredible. An incredible first half. I'm happy that we've been able to spend it together. We've had a lot of good conversations.
We got to watch a game together.
Did that. And
we'll do that again in the second half. Maybe
we will.
Maybe we'll even say, we'll casually mention where we're going to be watching the game. And if you happen to be in
two of you want to show up.
If a few of you want to, I'm not saying do an event. I'm saying like if some people want to come hang out in Astoria and watch a game together, feel free to mosey on down there.
Yeah.
But guys, thank you all for listening. Here's an interview now. We're going to throw to an interview with Evan the Artist, really talented kid. We met him through Dom Hamill. Like I said before, he painted some shoes for me. I did buy them because I support local artists.
I'm jealous. I'm thinking about getting myself a pair.
You're thinking about
Evan, I'm going to holler at you, momager.
But just remember, yesterday's price ain't today's.
Just toss the interview.
All right, here's an interview with Evan the Artist. And just make sure you can follow us on Twitter at Vito F. Khaleesi, at JMB9191. Thank you all for listening. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a review. and enjoy this interview with a really talented young kid. Hey, what's up? It's Vito Calisi, Jonathan Barron, and today we are joined by Evan the Artist. Evan, I met you through Dom Hamill, right?
Yes.
Dom Hamill, Mets minor leaguer that Dom designed a pair of shoes for. Started talking to Evan, and I decided I wanted to buy a pair of shoes as well, support the community, and get a nice pair of kicks. So I have not seen these yet.
Wow, an unveiling.
It is an unveiling.
First box unveiling I meet at the Apple.
And do you want to hear something cool?
Tell me.
2 Mets players have seen this before me.
Who are they?
Harrison Bader.
And who else?
And Mark Vientos.
What was their reaction?
Mark Vientos, he said that they were cool, and Harrison Bader said they were cool, and they both had like a lot of energy. So they said that they were gonna check out my page. I gave them some magnets that I had.
I will say those are the two of the drippiest Mets. Francisco Lindor is also in that category. So for them to give you that feedback, that's pretty cool stuff. Yeah. All right. So you want to do the
wait before that? You've also done stuff for Alex Cohen, right?
Yes.
What did you do for Alex?
So I drew her and Steve Cohen on my iPad, and I sent that file to my dad, and he embroidered it on a sweater. So we gave that to her in the memorabilia store.
Wow, that's amazing, dude.
Thank you.
And how old are you?
14.
14.
High school, or you're starting high school next year?
I'm starting high school.
Damn, dude.
You're going to be the most
You're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Freshman, lead of the freshman class. Well, I think it's time now.
Yeah. We need a little drum roll.
All right.
All right, here we go.
Should I open them and then
Yeah.
give them
Yeah,
to you?
open, and then you can present them to that camera.
All right.
All right, let's see. Yo!
Wow. That has everything Vito Calisi. That's literally everything. Meet at the Apple, Grimace,
Oh, no.
Trade,
Oh,
OMG.
no.
That's awesome, dude.
All right, show them off. Now, why don't you take everybody through? Here, I'll hold one, and then I'll switch with you. But why don't you take everybody through what, like, the shoe,
That's-
what you
that's
added to the shoe? Like, walk everybody through it.
Okay, so he asked for Grimace last minute. So we put Grimace
Special
on there.
request. I'm
Yes,
charging
yes,
some more
yes.
for that.
We put Grimace right there, and we colored half of it purple, his purple, like this guy. And then we added the Mets Willits Point sign right here on the front. And then we put the 7-line logo, and on the inside of the City Connect hat, it has like the little train patterns, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I did that on the swoosh.
Now, do you want to hear an interesting fact? One of the possible names for this podcast was Mets Willits Point. All right, now why don't you tell us this one?
Yeah. Okay. So he asked for the Meet at the Apple logo. So we put that on there, right there. And then with Jose Iglesias song coming out,
Oh!
we added the
You know about
OMG
that?
to
I
that.
didn't know.
Oh, wow, surprise.
Yeah, he didn't know about this, so we put that right there, the OMG. And then we put Mr. Met peeking his head out on the toe box.
Wait, and you're also forgetting one thing I just noticed.
Oh yeah, the skyline right there.
Oh, wow, that's really nice. That's a cool detail.
It's like it's in the light outline, so it's like subtle.
Now, how did everything come together? Like, could you tell us, like, the process of what came first in what order?
Yeah, so I did the Grimace part first. Like, I painted the whole thing purple, and then my mom, she had an idea to turn this into the sign of the Mets Willits Point.
That's the momager that Dom Hamill told us about on Future of Flushing.
Yeah, so I added that there.
So how'd you get into this? When did you start designing shoes?
Early 2020, like before COVID.
Before COVID,
Yeah.
okay.
So I was so bored. I had nothing to do. School was out. So I was on YouTube, and I came across this video of this guy's name is Marco and ZHC, right? So I looked at their videos, and they also customized shoes. So I got like I kind of wanted to like start from there. So I asked my mom if I could get a pair of a pair of shoes or like Vans, like Air Force One, like that. So I got one pair of those, like customized them with markers at first, and then I posted on my Instagram, and that's how like everything started. Like everyone started asking for them.
That's awesome. That's better
Thank
than
you.
just like wasting your time on TikTok
Yeah,
during
I
the
know.
pandemic. You started a
Thank
business.
you.
It's great. Now, who are some of the biggest athletes you've designed for?
But I made portraits for Lindor,
Wow.
Alonso, and Marte.
Oh, so you're spreading through the Mets clubhouse.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
And you're
Thank
also
you.
doing a project right now for the Mets, right?
Yeah. It's
What's that?
6 bases. I can't show them yet. I'll show them on the date of all the concerts, because they're all for the bands that are gonna do like the summer tour, like the concerts for Citi Field.
What's it like for you to be 14 years old and the owner of the Mets is reaching out to you and just being supportive of your work?
That's unreal, like, to think about it. And like, it's such a blessing for that to happen, like, at this young age. And like, a lot of kids don't have these opportunities, so like, I'm really grateful for that.
Well, I mean, you're a great example. Work hard, find something you're great at, get better at it, and you can start designing shoes for Major League ball players and coming on podcasts before you're even in high school. So, dude, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work, man. Seriously.
Thank you.
And you could follow Evan at EvanTheArtist on Instagram, and that's
TikTok.
where
Oh, yeah.
TikTok
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
But Instagram is that's where a lot of
Yeah,
your
that's
work.
like my main platform.
And just support Evan, and reach out. He's available for commissions, and you could get some nice shoes like this for yourself. But Evan, we wish you the best with everything. Can't wait to see. We know you have some stuff in store.
Yes.
So I'm sure we'll check back in with you at some point. But
All right,
thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.